Okay, we need to talk about the Calamity Bloods in Fairy Tail Wondrous Quest. Now, this contains spoilers for who these characters are for the manga Fairy Tail Quest, so if you're not caught up with the manga, please click off the video now because I'm going to jump into massive spoilers. Alright? Alright. So, the Calamity Bloods have been in the story for a couple of months now, and the big reveal of their identities being the dragons from the Grand Magic games that were brought in through the Eclipse thanks to Future Rogue during that whole section, minus Zarkonis and Atlas Flame, as those characters are already dead at the current point of the story and before the events. But having 5 particular dragons from the Dragon King whole event thing in the Magic games being brought back as Ignia's ace in the hole that him and Doggermog sealed away and slowly powered up over the centuries to be his elite fighting force in this grand dragonic world that he wants to create, or was going to create, with the Universal Mega Spell, with Alderaan as its core, and the roots created through Doggermog. These are Ignia's actual elite group, and we are starting to see them fight right now, as Mother Glare is staring down and beginning a fight with Urza. And while I'm excited, I'm kind of also concerned, because this marks the 3rd new group introduced in the exact same arc. And Fairy Tail has a lot of good in it, same with Hunter's Quest, but there is a lot of concerns and kind of, well, obvious criticisms of how these groups have been handled. So that's what we're going to jump into today. And if you like what you see here and want to see more, don't forget to like and subscribe and hit the notification bell for updates on future videos. Really helps and it shows you guys enjoy what I'm making on the channel and shows you want to see more. And if you want to see more of me outside this channel, I also have a second channel where I talk about comic books called GW Comics. I'm obviously going to be talking about the big 2 of Marvel and DC, but I'm going to jump into Image Comics as well, as there's stuff I want to read through that series of comics as well. Look forward to that. Link to that will be in the description down below and the title card. Please give it some support. We're less than 20 subscribers away from 1,000, so I really appreciate it if you help that grow. It's a passion project of mine. But let's jump right into the main topic. So the Calamity Flames, while having really awesome and cool designs, being a really sick reveal to bring older enemies that our heroes were basically losing against, and if Atlas Flame did not help out Natsu, things would have turned out horribly, and if Ultir did not sacrifice herself, everybody would die. Having those characters be brought back for our cast that are now exponentially stronger than they were at that, and now being like over 2 years ago, is a cool idea, especially since 100's Quest is all about the dragons and Ignia's goal of having a full-on dragon world. Also, it makes a lot of sense to bring these characters back in some form of way, because this gives our Dragon Slayers, our main Dragon Slayers, the chance at a get back, or at least just the main cast in general, a chance to have a full-on get back against these characters that they were unable to beat or even harm. Because, let's face it, there was no way of them winning. No Power Friendship was able to beat the dragons. Natsu only won because Atlas Flame helped give him power, and Ultir turned back time to help some characters avoid instant death. So, yeah, things were bad. But the concern comes from with how Fire and Flame and the Irrational Sext were handled. Now, I am going to say the Irrational Sext were handled better than Fire and Flame, in my opinion, but that was still a pretty low bar. When Fire and Flame was introduced, they all had pretty cool designs. They were all fire wizard themed, and they all eventually had cool, sick dragon forms. But they ended up getting a bit disappointing because Lekka, the fire make wizard with stranger flames that Natsu couldn't initially eat, was beaten pretty easily after getting a dragon form fighting Gray, who was an ice make devil slayer. They needed a solo fight. That would have been really cool to see, and have a bit more of a back and forth. The Signario sisters came back. They were given dragon powers. They saw their alchemy and flame magic. They were keys to starting Universal Mega. They were beaten by the main cast as well. Raj, he was a glass cannon to begin with. His power was mostly illusion based, so him getting taken out fairly easily made a lot of sense. I didn't really care for it. He's an illusion character. Illusion characters lose very easily if you break through what they're making. Brian was cool. I liked his magic. It was fun and interesting. And showing that Natsu couldn't beat him with just regular attacks, he had to go full force on the Dragon Slayer attacks, shows that he needed to try since he was basically part dragon now. But Wed was the biggest disappointment, because he was introduced wanting to fight and beat Urza before turning into a dragon. And then, when he shows up dragonified in really sick armor, he still looked awesome, and he was pushing Urza back. He was more or less dominating the fight now that he was a dragon, and Urza was feeling the fatigue. It seemed like Urza was definitely going to have to pull something out, or surpass her limits to beat him. Wed seemed like the biggest threat, and when we got the reveal that he was Ignia's son, that was something that really got everybody excited, because it showed that he wouldn't seemingly be a jobber to get one-shot. And look, a lot of people in my comments try to use the word one-shot on everything, but everyone keeps forgetting what one-shotting means. That's something to talk about in a different sect. But either way, Wed seemed like he was going to be a very big character, an interesting character for us to see in this whole section of the story. Now, around this time, when the dragons were happening, we also had the reveal of the Irrational Sext, which were demons made by the Book of made by Ferris, the brand new character introduced in this arc, who had Acnologia's ripped off left arm that Ignia ripped off during Tartarus, and somehow gained black magic through studies into looking into Zareth. Okay, cool. She's a combination of two of the best two really awesome villains in Fairy Tail. Feels cool. And as things go on, she actually feels more interesting, in my opinion. But the Irrational Sext also was a new villain group that I was excited for as well. Now they could have been really interesting to see. But let's jump back to Wed real quick, because the second Natsu joins the fray, and the second all of Team Natsu and all of Fire and Flame come together on the battlefield, it gets disappointing, because Natsu gives a friendship speech, and they all basically beat them relatively easily after struggling for a few seconds. It was disappointing, especially for Wed, who was a half-dragon human, and became a full dragon, and he had strong powers, and he was a strong swordsman. And he was literally, like, pushing Urza to the brink. Urza is strong. People keep forgetting that. She is strong. She is like top 5 in the guild. So pushing Urza back shows that Wed is nothing to be messed with. But having him being beat relatively easily by Natsu, again, makes sense. Natsu's the strongest in that group, but it also diminishes the threat of Wed. And so, this brings us to the Irrational Sext. Now then, having them beat members of the Irrational Sext when they show up to help is great. It shows that we have a threat here. And having at least 2 members of the Seist beating them was also really damn cool. Racer actually had a moment, which is something I didn't expect, and I actually really liked that he managed to win. Cobra had a really cool win, which, talk shit all you like, Cobra's win actually was really damn cool, and it was ballsy as hell. But then came Midnight's fight. Unfortunately, he lost to Zero, despite him having the biggest personal stakes in this fight. And he lost. And that was a real damn shame. But instead, in the darkest hour, where 4 demons are still standing, Fairy Tail Team B shows up with Juvia, Mira, Elfman, and Gajiel showing up. And I love seeing these characters fight. We haven't seen these characters in a good long while. 3 of them since the literal Alderaan arc, and Gajiel since the Doggermog arc. Which, okay, I'm glad they're back, and I'm excited to see them fight. Juvia's fight against Gate was fun, and it was interesting. It just was way too fast, because it lasted 1 chapter. Elfman's fight was barely a chapter long, and had some weird wibbly-wobbly things with how Beast takeover magic works. Mira's fight was cool, but again, too short, but at least we got her using the Allegria form. Her strongest takeover form for Satan's Soul. That was her strongest form. I'm glad she got it. I just wish the fight just lasted a bit longer, but it's also implied that she's taking Demon's powers as well in that instance, so I'm fine with that. Gajiel's fight, however, while it gave us actual backstory for Zero and made him more of an interesting character, Gajiel's fight felt like it could have been, I don't know, a bit more thematically relevant. His fight wasn't too short, but I feel like we could have done more with it, in terms of how it was written and the choreography of the fight, because not much really happened between their little scuffle. But again, it could have just been Midnight fighting and defeating Zero because of the, Zero, Midnight / Brain kidnapping him as a child, convincing him he's his dad, and basically grooming him and the Seist to be literal murderers and shit like that. So, yeah, there was a lot to do with that. But with the disappointment of Fire and Flame and the semi-disappointment of how the Irrational Sext were kind of handled in their introductions and how their stories ended, this brings the concern to the Calamity Bloods. Because they were introduced before the Irrational Sext were defeated, And right after Fire and Flame lost their fights. Well, except for Ferris, it was right before Ferris lost. But even still, we don't know anything of how they're going to fight right now. Mother Glare is fighting right now, and she's having no issues with Urza and the current team of Fairy Tail. At least Urza's the only one fighting Mother Glare at this moment. Who knows? Loxus might show up since he's the one that still has his full strength. But we still have 4 members of the Calamity Bloods still unaccounted for. And that's where the concern lies. Are they going to be one-on-one fights with just the main group of Fairy Tail plus Loxus that we have right now while Natsu's fighting Ferris and Ignia? Or are other Fairy Tail members going to jump in? Are Diablos finally going to get off their asses and do something? Are Sting and Rogue going to come back and help, since they definitely need to have a get back against at least 2 of those dragons that they couldn't beat during the end of the Grand Magic Games? I need those 2 to come back and beat those 2 dragons, because it would be so cathartic and would be so satisfying to see them beat who they couldn't beat before. Cobra could fight the dragon he couldn't beat as well, but he's tuckered out from that fight, so I think the Asace are kind of done for the most part. Gagio can still fight, obviously. He didn't lose too much strength. But even then, we don't know what's going to happen. And with how quick these fights have been, with the sporadic pacing of 100 Years Quest, with this arc in particular, the concern is definitely there, because the Calamity Bloods are a cool idea. It's really interesting to see past villains that we were never able to beat, but had to send back through to, well, time travel bullshit, because they were about to die. The main characters couldn't do anything against them, save for Natsu. But having to be brought back for a second chance, stronger than ever, against characters that are also stronger than they were before, that would be honestly really cool. It's a hype thing. But Mashima really needs to lock in with these, because they can't just be super quick fights with last minute power-ups or just something that just happens. I need these to be actual team fights or thematically relevant matchups to show the strengths of these characters that weren't able to win previously. Mashima has shown in Fairy Tail, in Eden Zero, and even to an extent right now with Dead Rock, and some sections of 100 Years Quest, that he can do that. Strengthen these characters through their fights, and make these fights satisfying. And I really do think that the best way to do that right now is to take the characters that have already fought off the board for now, and bring in fresh characters that have personal beef. Bring in Sting and Rogue. Have Gagio keep fighting and give him an interesting fight against a dragon he couldn't beat in the Grand Magic Games. Wendy's still there. She can help them fight and boost them as well in the fight against Mother Glare. Bring in Diablos, the Dragon Slayers, the Dragon Eaters that we had for the majority of this series in 100 Years Quest, and now they have done nothing for the past 2 arcs. I need them back because it makes no sense to introduce them and have them completely be useless towards the end of the story. Selena's used up all her power. She can't fight at all. So we have no Dragon Gods helping us, except for potentially Mercphobia, since Lucy has the key. Which, yeah, that's still there. Now then, there is a slight glimmer of hope that things won't go our hero's way, at least completely. And that's back when Lucy regained Aquarius, she said something foreboding. That if she knew what was going to happen, she would be more happy in the moment and appreciate that moment with Aquarius coming back to her than she did in that instance. Which shows that something big is going to happen in the near future. What is that going to be? I got no clue. But I really do hope it's something that adds more to the story in terms of personal stakes, and shows that things are going to be even more difficult moving forward. The Calamity Bloods have been built up already, and are currently dominating, at least with Urza right now, with Urza not doing anything to Mother Glare, it's just blocking her with her tail. We need these characters to actually matter. We need them to be difficult to beat. We need these fights to last more than just 2 chapters in terms of actual fight length. These are big characters that our main cast and side cast have not beaten, that we're getting run down over, and now they're stronger than before. We need these fights to be good. We need them to boost the characters in terms of their development and to show how far they've come since then. This is something that in the fight against Mother Glare that's starting to be set up. But it really needs to be just fully established and settled with who fights the Calamity Bloods and how they are handled. 100 Years Quest has had a lot of ups and downs. I've defended this series through many a time in this entire series because it's so much fun to read, even with its faults. But I will have to call out the bullshit and things that just leave me unsatisfied and disappointed. The Calamity Bloods seem to be, at least for right now, the endgame group for 100 Years Quest. No one else is around. There's no sign of potentially any other group showing up, because we are seemingly gearing up towards the actual endgame of this sequel. And so, they need to land. I have faith that Mashima will at least attempt to do something cool with these characters before they're inevitably taken out. But I'd be lying if I said I wasn't also prepared for potential disappointment based off in this same arc. The last two groups that we're introduced to were kind of disappointing at the end of the day. But either way, I'm looking forward to see what happens next, because either way, even with disappointment, there's going to be some fun on the horizon. But what do you guys think? Do you think the Calamity Bloods are going to give us some big things in the future? Do you have faith that Mashima will at least make these characters interesting, or make their fights fun? Or do you think it'll be a repeat of Fire and Flame and the Irrational Sex, and have them be relatively disappointed, save for one or two of them? Let me know in the comment section down below. And once more, like, subscribe, hit the notification bell for updates on future videos. And with all that said and done, hope you all have an awesome day.